Alright you guys, welcome to my first ever main event. We just bagged 31,100 chips. At our highest we were at 60,000, which is starting. At our lowest we were at 17K. Nothing went my way today, but we stayed in there and battled back from 17K. So now enjoy a 15-second montage of how the day went, and then we'll get right into day 2. Let's go! When I was 14, I made a pact with my 2 lifelong friends from Chicago, Randall and Reese, that we would one day enter the main event together. Well, I broke it. I couldn't wait any longer. I've been vlogging for almost 5 years now and have never played the main. That changes today. I cough up $10,000 of my own money and buy into the most hyped event of the year. My adrenaline is pumping. First hand of day 2, we look down at pocket 5s from the small blind and call a raise up to 2K, and we flop ourselves an open-ended straight draw with a backdoor flush draw, 4-3 deuce with 2 diamonds, and I obviously start with a check here. I don't think leading accomplishes too much, so when the button bets out for 2.2K, we finally have a decision of going for a check raise or just putting in the call, but given the fact I'm kind of short, I only have around 28K in my stack at this point, I decide just to put in the call, see what the big blind does behind me, and proceed accordingly on some different turn cards. After the big blind puts in the call, we are still 3 ways to the turn, and the dealer puts out the jack of diamonds, completing the front door diamond draw, but giving me a flush draw in case the other 2 opponents do not have a diamond in their hand. That's a little ambitious thinking. I start with a check, big blind checks again, and now the button continues for a bet of 4.2K. At this point, he's telling the story of a strong hand. At worst, he has a hand like ace-king offsuit with the ace or king of diamonds. I think it's way more likely as a hand like king-jack, ace-jack, maybe pocket queens, pocket kings. I don't think calling here is the right play because our diamond might not be live, in which case we'd just be lighting 4.2K on fire and drawing to any ace or a 6. For that reason, I decide to let it go here and save myself 4.2K. But right out of the gate here on day 2, we're losing a pot. Doesn't feel too great. Hopefully we can turn it around in the second one where we pick up the action mid-hand. I've already jammed my entire 24K stack in the middle. What's the action, you might ask? Well, the button raises it up to a standard 2.2K at the $800 blind level. I decide to jam my 24K stack in the middle. I think it's a fine play. And fortunately for us, he does not decide to put in the call. I say fortunately because although we're probably ahead of his 2 cards that he folded, but in big tournaments like this, when you take down the pot pre-flop a few times, it really adds up and you can chip up. And then when you finally get it all in and double up, it's worth a lot more. Alright, somehow we have dwindled all the way down to 17K. It's not been the best day 2 so far. I raise it up to 2.2K from middle position with a standard ace-9 of hearts. And the villain on the button decides to put in the call. He's the only one to do so. We are going heads up, out of position to a flop. The flop comes average, 7-4 deuce with 1 heart. We have a backdoor straight draw being the wheel. We have a backdoor flush draw, the nut flush draw I might add, and we have 2 overcards. So it's not the best board, obviously. We still have ace high, but in the long run, it's not the worst board. I decide to bet my range here for 2.8K. I think the villain on the button should be sort of capped. I know in tournaments you can be flatting with aces, kings, stuff like that. But on day 2 here, I don't really think everyone is following the perfect GTO tournament strategy, so I don't really think he's going to have aces or kings too much. That being said, I'm going to have all of them, so I bet out for 2.8K, representing all the strong hands. And to my surprise, the button decides to put in the call. He can have a plethora of different things. He could have some heart flush draws. He could have 5-6, 3-5, ace-3, heart draws, diamond draws, spade draws galore. So many things he can call me with on the flop, so when the 10 of clubs peels off, it doesn't really change too much, honestly. Everything I just mentioned did not get there. That was a draw. Additionally, if he has a hand like 6-7 or 7-8, I don't really think he's going to call too much here on the turn, or if he does, he's definitely going to fold the river. So in my shoes, I would like a nice bet here of around 7 to 10K, just continuing to tell the story of an overpair or maybe even my favorite hand, pocket sevens. I say that with a little bit of grace because me in the moment decided to check behind. Maybe it was my small chip stack. I didn't want to rip it all in. But yeah, my ace high here goes for a check, and the villain on the button decides to check behind, which I really like. If he bets out here on the turn, we'd probably have to fold it with my ace high and no more draws. So yeah, when he checks behind and we see a river, which comes the three of hearts, I like where I'm at. I think my ace high could be good here against a lot of random hands like king jack of diamonds. Maybe a hand like 8-9 of spades might have called a bet on the flop. So yeah, a lot of hands that we can still beat here. I don't really think betting accomplishes too much. I'm going to take my ace high to showdown, try to get to a cheap one at that, and I start with a check. The button checks behind, which is great news for us. I confidently turn over my ace high, expecting to be good, until we see he has a better ace high. Ace jack offsuit on the button there. And yeah, a bet there on the turn of the river would have gotten this exact hand to fold, but I think in the long run, betting the turn is the right move. But given the way I played it on the turn, I like my check on the river. Still can beat a lot of king, queen, and jack highs. So yeah, we're losing this 12.5k pot, which definitely hurts in the moment. But yeah, even though I thought I could play that hand a little bit better, not the worst played hand in the world. This hand though, this might be the best hand I've played in the 2 days of this tournament so far. We look down at pocket tens once again. I only have a measly 12.4k in my stack, which represents around 20% of a starting stack. So yeah, safe to say this tournament has not gone the way I wanted it to just yet. But hold your horses. I have pocket tens. I jam them from under the gun for 12.4k. And we'd like at least one caller, try to double up here and make some things happen. What we don't expect, though, is the villain in the +1, the cutoff, and the button all to put in the call. 4 ways now with pocket tens. We are not loving life. So many different combinations of hands that even though we might have them beat right now, we have to beat 3 different players, which is a very tall task. I stand up, I put my backpack on. That usually means you're going to win the hand, but don't overuse it. I recommend using it 1 to 2 times per tournament, and then the poker gods will notice, and it won't work in the future. And because I put the backpack on, they reward me with a flop of queen 10-7. Bang! We flop middle set. I'm standing up, I'm trying to keep it together, but we just flopped middle set, which is essentially the nuts given the way that everyone's played this hand. I don't think anyone could have pocket queens. The only person maybe would be the +1 position who'd flat with queens. But yeah, that's the only player. Other than that, I think I have the best hand. 2 hearts out there is a little bit scary, and equally scary is the +1 position who now decides to bet out for around half the size of the pot, 26.9k, and the action folds around to the big blind. I say that's scary because the villain in the +1 could have pocket queens. You could also have some random assortment of hands like king jack of hearts even for the entire deck of outs. When the action comes back around to the big blind, I like this 26.9k bet because hopefully it'll get the big blind to fold some sort of heart draw maybe, or maybe a king jack of diamonds, something like that. And after a little bit of thinking, he does find the fold. We're going heads up versus the villain, the +1, who confidently turns over ace king of hearts. We have to fade any jack or any heart on the turn and river. And if we do, we are going to quadruple up. I've never tripled up in my life, let alone quadrupled up. The turn card comes the 5 of clubs. We are halfway there to a quadruple up. And the river comes another brick, the 6 of spades. Look at us. I fist pound. I sit back down. The backpack trick has worked. 51.1k in our stack. We are almost back up to a starting stack, you guys. Holy crap. What a hand. And now bring it to real time to show my emotions. All right, checking in on our second break here. We got the quadruple up that we needed. Tens hold against ace king, and the guy to my right said he had 8-9. So he was gonna river a straight. Luckily he got out of there with that huge bet on the flop. And yeah, we got the quadruple up. We're sitting at around 40 big blinds at the moment. And my heart is pumping. This is what the main event's all about. Let's see if we can make it to day 3. We gotta get through a few more breaks and then dinner break. Let's go. All right, the hijack raises it up to 2.3k. I'm in the small blind with a suited jack 7 of spades. I put in the call and the big blind does as well. We are off to a flop, which gives me 2 pair. King, king, 7, 1 spade and 2 diamonds. I start with a check. The big blind also checks it over to the hijack, who bets out for 2.8k. And given the fact I flopped myself 2 pair, that's a pretty good hand. I put in the call, and the big blind does as well. He puts in the call, which is kind of sneaky there. Does he have a king? Does he have a diamond draw? Who knows? He puts in the call, and we are off to the turn. Still 3 ways, which gives me a boat. It comes the king of hearts. I really like this card because I have a boat. I'm chopping versus any better 7. And it makes it that much less likely that anyone has a king. I'm really only losing to a hand like 8s, 9s, 10s. I start with a check. I don't see any point in putting money in the middle. Any of the diamond draws now aren't live because I have a boat. And the big blind checks it once again. The hijack now decides to slow down, check behind, and we are off to the river, which comes an inconsequential 6 of spades. Even if the opponents had a hand like pocket 6s, I would still have a better hand with my kings full of 7s. For that reason, I decided to start with a check, maybe call a bluff versus a hand like ace-queen. Could be a hand I think would do that. I start with a check, and the big blind now does something I have never seen before. Maybe it's my inexperience in tournaments, and this is just a high-level play, but he jams all in for 65,000 chips, and the hijack couldn't get out of this hand fast enough. The action is back over to me, and I have a boat. What do you guys do in this spot? Let me know down below before you see what I do. But yeah, the big blind just rips it in for 65K. Does he have a king? Seems a little bit unlikely. A 7 might do this, trying to get me off a chop. I think more likely than not, though, it's a hand like pocket 8s, pocket 9s. And yeah, they're trying to get max value versus any other boat like 7s or 6s. So at the end of the day, I decided to fold my cards. This is not the way I'm going out of the main event. I'm not going out of the main event trying to bluff catch in this weird spot here. So I end up folding, and later on in the session, he told me he had pocket 10s. So I know you can't believe all poker players out there, but this guy seemed a little trustworthy. And the story kind of makes some sense. Doesn't want to bet on the flop, he calls some bets and then just rips it on the river when he doesn't think I have a king after checking all 3 streets. Makes a lot of sense. Nice hand, villain. You are scooping in that pot. All right, this is where the video starts to get good. I look down at pocket deuces from the big blind. The blinds have gone up to 600, 1.2, 1.2, and the under the gun decides to raise it up to 2.7K. One of their player puts in the call, so I put in the call as well with my pocket ducks. And look what the flop brings in. Ace, 8, deuce, bang. We flop bottom set. Very disguised at that. I decided to start with a check, obviously, and the villain in the under the gun bets out for 6.2K. I love this. The other player gets out of the way and the action's back over to me. Could go for a raise here and try to represent a hand like 8, 9 of spades. Maybe a hand like 3, 4 of spades that might call from the big blind. Or maybe even a hand like ace, 8 or ace, deuce. But yeah, I actually decided just to put in the call here. I'm going to slow play from out of position, maybe go for a check raise on the turn, or maybe even the river. I decided just to put in the call. Dealer, put out that turn card. The turn card comes about as good as it gets. The ace of hearts. Bang! We turn a boat. Double bangs in this hand. I say bang because we have a boat. And if he has a hand like ace king or ace queen, which he most likely has from under the gun, we are in for a large cooler. I'm not going to bet out now. I decided to check. I'm not scared of anything. Any of the better aces except for ace 8 exclusively I have beat. And any of those spade flush draws that might want to continue betting on the turn will do so. So I check. And sure enough, the under the gun does not slow down into the 22.9K pot. Comes around a 1/3 pot size bet for 8.2K. And now we have a decision. A check raise here would look really strong. It would be representing pocket 8s or pocket deuces. If he doesn't have an ace, he's just going to fold immediately. But if I just call here and the river doesn't come a spade, I have 2 options. I can rip my entire stack in, making it look like a missed spade draw. Or if it's not a spade and I rip my entire stack in, could make it look like I was slow playing an ace or a set like this. So yeah, that's what I decided to do. Just putting in the call here, getting a little tricky. I don't want any of his worst hands to fold just yet. So I decided to put in the call, bloating the pot up. And yeah, he's going to get an insane price here when the 4 of clubs comes in. And I posture for around 20 seconds before ripping my entire stack in. It's around 20,000 and the pot is around 40,000. So he's getting an insane price to call with any ace. That's what he does. He snap calls. I immediately turn over my boat and he tables ace jack offsuit. So yeah, I don't think he was going anywhere on the turn if I decided to rip it there. But just in case he had a suspect hand like ace 5 off, ace 6, something like that. If I just call that turn and rip it in on the river, I don't think there's any world in which he can fold. Look at us, 79K coming our way. Just after winning that quadruple up, we are now doubling up. We go from 12,000 chips all the way up to 79,000 chips in a matter of 2 hands. Let's freaking go. Alright, this next hand we look down at my favorite 2 cards, pocket 7s from the hijack. We face a limp from the villain in the +1 position who makes it 1.2k. I decide to put in the call and the villain in the big blind decides to raise it up to 6.2. We're in a weird spot. Until we see the +1 position put in the call, I'm getting a great price to call here and try to flop a set. It is my favorite hand, and they don't let me down too often. So I decided to stick in the call. I've been running pretty good so far. I've made some more chips. Let's put them to work, and we immediately flop a boat with Queen, Queen 7. Bang! What a flop. Unbelievable. At first I thought I had a set, but then 2 queens come out. And yeah, this is a dream flop. Not only do we have a boat, there are 2 queens out there, and either the big blind or the +1 could easily have a hand like Queen 10, Queen Jack, Ace Queen, and just be in for a massive cooler. We want the big blind to continue betting, and that's what he decides to do to the tune of 5,000 chips. I'm going nowhere. No sense in raising here and setting off alarm bells. I just put in that smooth call. Just like that, we are heads up to a 30,000 chip turn. The turn now comes the Jack of Hearts, and the big blind decides to bet out for 8k. Interesting that he decided to go for a small sizing instead of sizing up with a hand like King Queen. Maybe he has a hand like Queen Jack. That would be a huge cooler, and betting small makes a lot of sense. Trying to keep me in. We're not going to think negative thoughts though. When he bets 8k, I decide just to put in the call once again. And just like that, we are off to the river. The dealer pulls in our 8k from both sides, and we see a 9 of clubs. If he had a hand like King 10, he now made a straight. The board is paired though, so he should exercise some caution. And that's what he decides to do. He slows down and checks. I don't really like this because I don't see too many King Queen, Ace Queen, Queen 10 type hands checking on the river here. So yeah, I want to go for a sizing. How big do I want to go? I look over at his stack and he doesn't have that many more chips. He only has around 21k chips. So I decide to put it all in. It's only around half the size of the pot. So if he has any Queen X here, I don't think he can fold. I don't even think a hand like Ace Jack would be in a very easy spot here. They might have to consider calling. But yeah, that's not to be. I jam it in. He decides to fold. So it looks like he pulled off some bluff that got there on the river and decided to fold. Who knows? Still, I am being rewarded by the poker gods. My favorite hand, pocket 7s, comes through in a big way. Too bad we couldn't have stacked that opponent, but no complaints from me pulling in that 46.4k pot, which if you do the math is 3/4 of a starting stack. So that was pretty much a real money $7,500 pot. Pretty sick when you think of it like that. This next hand, I look down at Ace 10 offsuit from the hijack. I decide to raise it up in the cutoff calls. We see a flop that comes Jack 4 deuce. I'm going to have all the strong hands like pocket jacks and Ace Jack. So I decided to go for a c-bet even though I'm out of position, and the opponent puts in the call. After the dealer makes some change, we see the 6 of clubs peeled off on the turn. Didn't really like that flop call, but I think I probably should be barreling here on the turn. Instead, I slow down and check. The opponent smells weakness and bets out for 11.2k, to which I say, no way, Jose. I decide to fold. I later connected with this villain, and he told me he bluffed me, which doesn't feel very good. I think barreling the turn would have been the best play there, but yeah, he's going to scoop that one in, and we move right along to the low jack, where I look down at pocket 6s. The +2 position named Kevin decides to raise it up to 2.7k. I put in the call, and both blinds decide they're getting a great price. Let's go off 4 ways to a flop. When I think of pocket 6s, the best flops would contain a 6 in it, and that's what we get. King 8-6, bang, we flop bottom set again. This has been a dream day 2 for me, having a lot of pocket pairs and finally making a ton of sets in a pretty disguised way. Kevin bets out for 5k and the action's on me. I'm in the low jack and I actually decide to pop it up right away. I'm gonna have a lot of draws here like 5-7, 5-4, diamond draws. I could even have a hand like 8-6 of spades or clubs. I could even have a hand like King 8 of spades, and of course I could have the elusive pocket 6s. So given my entire range, I decide to put more money in the middle. If he has a king, I don't think he will fold. 14,000 chips is the price, and after the blinds get out of the way, Kevin decides to put in the call. We are playing a large one here, 38.8k going to the turn, And it comes an interesting card, the 5 of spades. It now completes hands that I might have. For instance, 7-9 now makes the nut straight. When Kevin checks it over to me, I gotta represent all the strong hands and all my draws as well. So I continue betting for the price of 23,000 chips. As soon as I bet 23K, Kevin says, "Did you flop another set?" Obviously, everyone at the table is aware of the heater I'm going on right now. So he says that and then immediately raises all in, covering me 75,000 chips. It has me covered. It's only around 63,000 effective. So I really only have to put in 40K to make this call. Still, it feels really weird. Why would he talk to me and then rip it all in if he had a hand like King Queen or King Jack? I think a lot of his strong hands here would be pocket kings that play this way, pocket eights. He could even have a hand like diamonds that might want to get it in here, but that seems very ambitious, especially in the main event. So I'm really putting him on 2 hands here, pocket kings, pocket eights, and then just some random airball bluffs that decided to go crazy. At the end of the day, I thought about it for a while, around 30 seconds. It wasn't a snap call, which I know seems like a nit roll, but when your tournament is on the line, there are better hands that he could have. Remember, he raised pre-flop, so kings are still in his range. Maybe when ICM implications become very relevant on day 5 or 6, where a call here could represent a 100 or 200K loss, I might decide to fold. But here, in the beginning stages of day 2, I decide to put in the call, and he shows us the great news. He has ace-king, decided to get it in on the turn. Potentially thought I could have some diamond draws there. Just wanted to get it in. We are playing a 188,000 chip pot, and we have an almost lock on this hand. The river comes the 8 of hearts, and his fate is sealed. He doesn't get stacked though. He's not out of the tournament. Kevin has more chips. But as for us, we are up to almost 200,000 chips. Remember, only around 4 hands ago, I had 12K and quadrupled up. Yeah, we are sitting on an almost 3.5K starting stack. We gotta like our chances going into day 3. Before we make it to day 3, we find ourselves on a new table. Unfortunately for us, our heater is gonna end at that last table. I did not want to leave. A lot of friendly faces there, and I was running like the absolute sun. But it wasn't to be. We table change and move over to the next one. I look down at ace-king from middle position and open it up to 4K, and the big blind puts in the call, leading us off to a flop, which comes 8-4-4. When he checks it over to me, I decide to check behind, which I don't really love. I'll still have all of the strong pocket pairs here. Could have some diamond draws as well, like ace-king of diamonds, ace-5 of diamonds. So I think a bet in the long run is the better play. But in the moment, I check behind, bringing in the 9 of diamonds on the turn. The villain in the big blind now bets out for 3.5K in the actions on me. Given the fact that I have now picked up a diamond draw, the second nut diamond draw to be exact, I know the board is paired, but I don't really think he's going to have 8s or 9s here. I decide to put in the call. I have 2 overs. He could just be trying to bluff here with a hand like Jack 10 of spades, something like that, trying to get me off my equity. But that's not going to work, man. I put in the call, and we see one of the best cards on the river. It comes the ace of diamonds, giving me the essential nuts. Unfortunately, though, the villain in the big blind checks it over to me. Now we have a decision on how large to go. Obviously, I'm going to bet my flush here. He could have some worse hands like the queen of diamonds or jack of diamonds. I decided to bet small for 7.5K, and he folds. So even though we got there on the river, did not get the extra value. Moving right along into the next one, where we look down at ace 10 of spades from the big blind. There's a raise to 3.5K. There's a call. I decided to defend my big blind, put in the call. We are going 3 ways to a flop, which gives me top. I check, the under the gun checks, and the villain on the button now bets out for 5K. Can't be going anywhere with my top pair, top kicker. I also have the backdoor nut flush draw. I put in the call. A check raise here might also be good in the long run. Trying to protect some equity versus 8-9. Maybe a hand like Jack Queen that might get there on the turn. Speaking of which, the Queen of Diamonds peels off on the turn. Not the best card in the world because a hand like Queen 10 now has me outkicked with 2 pair. For that reason, I decided to start with a check once again. And to my surprise, both other opponents in this hand check it behind, leading us off to the river. The river is another interesting one. It comes a diamond, but it gives me 2 pair coming the ace of diamonds. Now, if we think about all the hands that would bet out on the flop from the button's perspective, and then check on the turn, the ace of diamonds really shouldn't change too much. I have 2 pair. I want to get value versus queen 10, 10, 7, maybe a hand like king 10 or king queen. Yeah, let's get some value here. There's 28.5K in the pot. How large would you guys go? I decide on a sizing of 17.5K. I want to make it large enough where it looks like I could have some bluffs, but I also want to go large enough where I could get called by a hand like King Queen, Ace Jack, something like that. Ace 7 even might call me and I'd get paid. Sure enough, the under the gun puts in the call. The button thinks about it for a while. He looks a little bit distraught. Before folding his cards, I turn over my 2 pair, expecting to be good. But yeah, we are not good. Under the gun turns over pocket 10s. So this is actually a very large cooler. The case 10 comes out on the flop, and he decides to check it. Remember on the flop, under the gun checked it over to the button. Yeah, he's going to get max value here with his pocket 10, scooping in that 64K pot. Man, that's a cooler. We would have loved that, up over 200K if we win it. But instead, we move along into the next hand where I have 165K, and I look down at Ace King offsuit from the small blind. Now this hand gets a little bit interesting. The floor is going to have to be called over. Why? Well, middle position jams all in for 18K, and the cutoff did not see that. He was too busy raising it up to 3.5K. So yeah, his 3.5K went in as the middle position jammed for 18K. And obviously the floor has to be called over to see if he can pull it back or if that 3.5K has to stay in regardless if he folds or not. After a little bit of discussion, the floor decides it has to stay in the middle. And in the end, the cutoff does not want to play. He decides to fold his cards. An extra 3.5K in the middle, and I love it with my Ace-King offsuit here from the small blind. When it comes around to me, I look over at the big blind. He's the only one left in the hand other than the middle position who has already jammed for his entire stack. I look over at the big blind. He has around 60K. So yeah, I'm going to put it all in. I rip it all in for 60K effective, and he snap folds. The middle position turns over King Jack. And just like that, we are in an all-in situation in a pretty great spot, I must add. Let's go to a run-out.
Good point, guys. It was for me. It would have been for me.
That could have got interesting there for a second. After knocking out our first opponent of the tournament, we get rewarded with pocket kings from the big blind. Our luck gets even better when we look over and the under the gun raise it up to 4.5K. The button decides to flat call and the action's over to me. I think about it for around 15 to 30 seconds, deciding on how large to go. I end up deciding that a 17.5K raise is appropriate. And they both fold. So even though you get the kings, you get the raise and the call, you still got to get them to call pre-flop in order to make more money, but instead we are taking down that 14K pot uncontested, and that's going to wrap up our day 2. We ended up bagging 157K, which felt amazing. Let's bring it to the outro. All right, we got the perfect backdrop to do this outro. We bagged 157.5K, which is, I don't know how many big blinds, but probably like 75, 80 big blinds. At our lowest, we had 12K. All the way up to 157.5. Let's freaking go. Tomorrow is day 3, my first ever main event, and we're coasting along to day 3. What an absolute dream. First place just got announced. It's 12 million, and all the way down to 1500th place will pay 15K. So right now there's like 3,700 people left. We just got to dodge 2,200 and we'll make a 5K profit. I appreciate all the support, you guys. Day 3 is coming out in a few days. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay tuned and see that. But as for now, I'm going to catch you in the next video. Peace!